So I think we can say this together. That personality who delivered the treasure of prema bhakti, who was so intense with compassion, where is such a personality to be found as Sri Acharya Thakura? That's Thakura. Where are the saviors of the fallen souls? Where is my Swarup Damodar? And where are Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami? Where is Raghunath Das to be found? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta Goswamis? Where am I to find Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj now? All at once they have gone to join Lord Gauranga, the great dancer. They have all gone off together in their own Leela pastimes. And thus Thakur says, I must simply run. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. So, due to some oversight and scheduling, somehow or another here I am, sitting here. Probably somebody more qualified should be giving this talk like Maharaj, but I'm so shameless that I didn't even bother to try to wriggle out of it, but I hope please give me your blessings that I could say something. Thank you. Nice. So, yeah, this is a really big, important day. When I found out, when I remembered I was giving class, and I rang Archita, because he gave class on Saturday, and I asked him, what's the verse? And he said, oh, you hit the verse jackpot. You know, because today's verse for the Bhagavatam was going to be a very famous verse, Matra Svarsha Duhitrava Naba Vivakshano Balavan Indriyo Gramo Vidvam Samapikarshati, that the senses are so strong and impetuous that even a person of even a highly advanced person, a person highly elevated in knowledge of Vidvan, will become agitated by sex desire if he sits too close, even to his mother, his sister, or his daughter. That would have been today's verse. So, but then I remembered what today's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Disappearance Day. So I wasn't sure, should I, you know, do a class and just say something about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, or should I give a, you know, class dedicated to just speaking about him? So I asked Suvas, rang up Suvas. Actually, I rang up Sura. Sura was sitting there with Suvas. So I said, could you ask Suvas? And Suvas' immediate response was, no, give a class. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That's a, you know, that's a big important personality. We have to give a special class completely, exclusively dedicated to glorifying him. So here we go. We're going to try. So we're going to start off at the end, kind of, a little bit, and work back. I'm going to read just a very, not an excerpt, it's pretty much the full letter Prabhupada got from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur just maybe 2 weeks before he passed away. The circumstances leading up to that, Prabhupada was feeling himself. He was feeling a little bit like, not despondent, but he was feeling, I should be doing more, you know. So he wrote some letter to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur expressing that, you have so many disciples, some of them are serving you as sannyasis, they're preaching very nicely, you know, they're doing so much to serve your mission. I'm a grihasta, you know, don't feel I'm doing very much. Anyway, how can I serve you? That's, you know, basically, that was the gist of the letter. Prabhupada describes this in at least one lecture. You know, he describes this incident. And so Prabhupada goes in and he got back a response. He says, my dear such and such, you know. And then here was the actual letter he received. Without the, you know, the beginnings. This is the body of the letter. It says, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate to inculcate the, now I can't read my own writing here, the novel, sorry, to inculcate the novel impression to the people in general and philosophers of modern age and religiosity. So he wanted Prabhupada to preach. That's what he wanted Prabhupada to do. Very clear, you know, very direct. And then pretty much Prabhupada received that letter on December 3rd, 1936, and basically a month. And on January 1st, 1937, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura departed from this world and entered into the Nitya Lila. So, yeah, this is what was important to him. This is what was important to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and this is why it was so important to Prabhupada. He wanted Prabhupada to preach. He was all about preaching, you see. We got to understand that he is like a very special personality. He was called for by his father. There's a story that explains about that. Bhakti Vinod Thakur was at one point in his career, he was working as like a magistrate in Jagannath Puri. He was from a class of Bengalis. They were called Bhadralok. And basically they were Bengalis who were educated within the British system, and they knew how it worked. You know, they were a little, like a kind of notch above your average person out there. So at one point he was transferred to Jagannath Puri. He was a magistrate. And so one night he had a dream. He had a dream. And in that dream, he actually was living about 100 meters from the main Jagannath temple there in Jagannath Puri. So in this dream, Lord Jagannath appeared to him. And Lord Jagannath said, "Hey, I didn't bring you here for you to just, you know, get all caught up in all this legal stuff. I brought you here to kind of, you know, revive the Vaishnava teachings." That was, you know, Lord Jagannath said that to him in the dream. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his response was, "Yeah, but, you know, I'm an old man. I'm an old man now, and I've got 6 kids, and, you know, to be honest with you, I just can't see it happening. I need help. If you want me, if that's what you want to happen, I need some help. You know, send me, you know, somebody to help me." And then Lord Jagannath told him, "Okay, so go to the temple and pray to Bimala Devi," who I'm not exactly sure exactly who Bimala Devi is a deity of, but anyway, that was Lord Jagannath instructed him to pray to the Murti or the deity of Bimala Devi. So he did that. He did that. And then sometime after that, Bhaktisiddhanta was born. You know, the 7th child was born. He was the 7th child. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur took that as, you know, a reciprocation from that incident. And he saw that as this is Lord Jagannath responding, you know, coming through on his promise there to send some help. And he felt that his son was a Raya Vishnu, special personality. And that's how we understand him, as somebody who descended from the spiritual world here to the material world to preach Krishna consciousness. So, and there was further signs of that, you know, that was the case as his life progressed. Like, very, you know, shortly after he was born, he was, I don't know if it's just in a carriage, or I can't remember what the exact situation was, but he was going down the road, and they were passing just in front of the temple, the Jagannath temple. Oh, before I get to that one, I'll say one other thing. When he was born, his mother's umbilical cord was wrapped around him like a Brahman's thread. You see? So when he came out, you know, it looked like he had a Brahman's thread on, because that's how the umbilical cord was wrapped around his body. Okay, so then the next incident was, he was in, maybe it was you know, like a carriage that they wheel kids in, or whatever. And when they went in front of the Jagannath temple, the garland from the deity fell. Sorry? Oh, he's remote. Okay, even better. Right, can everybody hear that? Everybody heard that? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so that doesn't happen every day. It's not like every time you touch the deity's feet, a garland falls, you know. So they took that as a further sign that this was, you know, some special child. In his, then in his childhood, in his younger days, when he was very bright. He was very bright. When he was in school, he memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita by 7 years old. He studied Vedic literatures. He got that down. He was very interested also in astronomy. At one point, he became a very, expert student in astronomy, and he was awarded the name Siddhanta Saraswati due to his erudition in astronomy. You know how bright he was in that. You know. And but really, the thing was, he was interested in reading his father's books and his father's teachings. He was very interested in what his father was doing. And his father at that point was very active in some society. I can't remember the name, but something. I can't remember the name, but sorry, I didn't write it down. So he was, and he was, involved in trying to revive the teachings, Vaishnava Siddhanta. So he was writing books to that effect, and so he was very interested in this type of thing. Gora Sabha something. Actually, our former doctor, temple doctor, Dr. Mandal, who Savas remembers very well, very fondly, his father was a member of that. His father was a treasurer for that Gora Sabha, I forget Vaishnava, society. And he actually met Prabhupada. He actually used to go out on kirtan with Prabhupada, so that was just a little bit of trivia there. But so anyway, he was doing very well in school, and at one point he didn't go as far as to graduate because he was afraid that if he graduated, officially graduated college and got a degree, they'd make him get married. Because he was, that was fierce, so he didn't bother, like Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't actually formally accept his, degree. He dropped out of the Scottish Church's College as a protest. He was part of the Gandhi's movement at that point, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did it for a different reason. Anyway, so, but he said, by his own admission, Bhaktisiddhanta said his life changed, even though he was very interested in his father's preaching and teachings, and he was, learning it and really understood everything very well. But according to his own admission, he felt like it was a little bit academic. It was a bit academic to him until he met Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and I wasn't able to print it out or write it out, but there's in some book there's a paragraph where he describes how when he met Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he saw an example, like a living example of how this philosophy, how this can actually be applied in life practically, and how somebody could be a living spiritual personality. He was very inspired by Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and his father actually was the one who directed him to take initiation from Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. And at first, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj wouldn't accept him. Not because he didn't think he was qualified. Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj didn't think he was qualified. He was approached by Bhaktisiddhanta, and Bhaktisiddhanta asked for initiation. And he asked for his mercy. And Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, that's not my business, giving mercy. That's Mahaprabhu's business. I don't have mercy to give. Mercy is given by Mahaprabhu. So he said, Bhaktisiddhanta said, can you ask Mahaprabhu? He said, okay, I'll do that. So then on the second meeting, he asked him, so what did he say? And he said, I forgot to do it, I forgot. He said, please ask him. And then the third meeting, the same thing. He said, actually, I forgot. He said, okay, but if you don't accept me as your disciple, I'm going to jump off the bridge or something and commit suicide. So then he accepted him. He finally he realized how completely sincere he was and how determined he was, so he accepted him. And that was a big turning point in his life, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj's life. Then there were so many different things, and I'll try to mention a few ones I can remember. There was back in the early part of his career, there's a famous debate he had in Midnapur. See, at that time, there was like a lot of Brahmins. I think it was, the caste. The Brahmins had this idea that unless you were a Brahmin, you couldn't really practice. You couldn't really be a proper devotee of Krishna. And so anyway, he engaged in this debate with these Brahmins, and he defeated. He came out victorious. He started off by glorifying the Brahmins, and they were, they thought, oh, this is good. He's really appreciating us. But then after that, he glorified the Vaishnavas in such a way that they can understand that actually the Vaishnavas were in a superior position to even the Brahmins. So at least on that occasion, he soundly defeated them in the debate. But they, at the same time, it goes deep. What's the word? I guess the envy, or goes very deep, and there was a feeling. There was tension between his followers, the Vaishnavas, and the Brahmin community all throughout his career. Actually, at one point, Prabhupada tells this story in one lecture. At one point, they actually threatened to kill him. Or there was a plot, there was a conspiracy to kill him. And what happened was, one of the, I don't know if it was the chief of police or just some highly placed police person approached him. And he told him, he said, look, actually, you better not go to this place and speak today because, there's a plot to kill you. And the policeman said, actually, we ordinarily do take bribes, and we do this kind of thing. But he said, but not in the case of a saintly person like you. So, he knows he refused to take the bribe and do that, be part of the conspiracy, and he actually tipped off Bhaktisiddhanta. So the next part of the story, Prabhupada, I never heard from Prabhupada, but I heard elsewhere that, so they had another disciple who went there, or Bhaktisiddhanta went there. I can't remember the exact detail, but somebody disguised as Bhaktisiddhanta went there, and then that's how he was able to escape safely. Throwing bricks. Mm-hmm. Right. So so we could see he was preaching at great risk. He wasn't intimidated though. Actually, he had a lot of enemies. Well, he didn't have any enemies, but a lot of people felt inimical towards him because he was challenging. He was against, not against, but he was trying to point out the misunderstandings of this Brahmin community. He was against caste Brahmanism, the idea that you have to be born in a Brahmin family, you have to have certain. No, his idea was, as consistent with what, coming right down from Lord Chaitanya, that anybody, it's dependent upon a person's character. It's depending upon a person's willingness to practice, devotional service. That's what determines who's eligible to receive devotional service, not what family they're born in, and not a lot of, official stuff like that. You see? So he met with a lot of opposition, and I think on that occasion that was part of it. That was part of the feelings. Sorry? Yeah. See, so there was a lot of animosity towards the devotees for that, and because due to those them taking shelter of those misconceptions. Another one was he was against the Sahajas. Sahajas, people who were engaging in sensuous activities and like thinking that that was a form of practicing devotional service. He preached out against a lot of people who were not practicing devotional service according to the conclusions of the predecessor acharyas, particularly like Rupa Goswami and like that. Right. So, wherever he went, there was people who were kind of like, but he, as I said, he was fearless. It wasn't like he never backed down. And quite the contrary, sometimes they were afraid of him. He was awarded the honorific title of the Nrsimha Guru because he was such a fearless preacher. And sometimes it's said that if he was walking down the street and some Mayavadi sannyasis or whatever were coming the other direction, they, out of fear that he was going to confront them and start debating with them and philosophically attacking them, they would go. When they saw him, they would kind of go away like that. They didn't want to have to deal, because they knew he was you don't mess with this person. He really knows his stuff, and he's not going to let you get away with anything. So they didn't want to be confronted by him. More about his preaching when he was. Where were we up to? Oh, actually, I'll just back up a little bit. So at one point after he finished school, well, while he was in school, another great quality that they noticed about him, he had what was called an eidetic memory. Anybody else know that word? Eidetic? Huh? Yeah, it's photographic memory. Photographic memory, basically. Generally, it's found in young children, and unless that talent is cultivated at that point, people usually lose it, but basically it's a photographic memory. And it's said in his biography that even right in the last days, in the very last part of his life, he was still able to quote verbatim passages from books that he read as a young child. And, people were amazed by that. So that was, further part of, he was, he's considered a genius. They called him, I think I mentioned, they called him the walking encyclopedia. Did I say that already? Yeah, as a kid, he was known as the walking encyclopedia because of that. He read books and he remembered what he read. Just practically, to very high quality of, remembrance. At one point, because he was such a bright student and everything like that, this is actually before he met a spiritual master, but I'll just kind of mention it again, tie it in, even though I'm backtracking a little bit. He had some connection with a royal family, and he was educating, the members of the royal family, and he was he's very well situated. He had a salary. They offered him a pension. He was set up, and it's described in the biography that if he would have continued along those lines materially, he was quite set up. It would have been great income, nice position, and everything. But he wasn't happy with that. He actually gave that all up. And even when he gave it up, they wanted to continue giving him a pension, even though he wouldn't be doing that service anymore. And he accepted it for a while, and then he gave that up. And that's when, after that, then he met a spiritual master, and he got more seriously into spiritual life. Then at one point, he was there in Mayapur, actually. His father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, had some land where now is the famous Yogapeeth temple. Somehow Bhaktivinoda Thakur had that land. So at that point in his career, he was living there. And both his father, first his father, and then Gorkashore Das Babaji Maharaj, they both passed away within a relatively short period of time, close together. So he was there then in Mayapur, and there were other devotees who were part of that sangha, and they were on board with this idea of trying to revive Vaishnavism. But it's described they were grihastas, and they had other things they were doing, and they weren't in a position to be fully dedicated. So Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur at that point, he felt himself at a loss. He felt like, what to do? It's not going to go anywhere here. I mean, I'm all on my own. My father's gone, my Guru Maharaj is gone. These people are nice devotees, but they just don't have the time to get involved to the degree that's required to make, get anything going. So anyway, that's when he just realized he had to start preaching. Maybe I think somebody gave him a suggestion. I can't remember, some other advanced devotee, but he decided, yeah, I got to start preaching now. I got to start a mission. So it's described that at one point he gave himself sannyas. He sat in front of a picture of his spiritual master because he realized, he just felt he did this on the strength of his own realization. He had that, that confidence. He was in Nityasiddha. And he he sat in front of a picture of his spiritual master and he awarded himself sannyas. He took sannyas. And then after that, he went to Calcutta, and that's when he started the Gaudiya Math, basically. I don't know if they called it that to start off with, but they had a temple in northern part of Calcutta, Ulta Danga. And he was, preaching, and it was going good. He immediately attracted a following. There was people interested to, be part of that organization. At one point, it built up to to that. He had 64 maths. There were 64 temples across India. It was either 18 or 19 sannyasis who were preaching, full on, and many members, like grihastas who were living in the temple or just very closely affiliated with the temple, and they were all following, they had all rules and regulations. It's a program similar to what we're following, actually, that they had, morning and evening program type of thing, and the other members would participate in that. So that was going on, and that started in 1918, I believe, and it wasn't too long after that our Srila Prabhupada came in contact with him. Their first meeting, everybody knows the story, I'll just tell it very briefly. So Prabhupada was going someplace with a friend of his, Narendranath Mullik or something, maybe that's his name. So they were going, I don't know where they were going actually, but this friend was telling him, actually, you know what, we should go hear this sadhu speak. He's really good. He had already been. He's really good. And Prabhupada was reluctant. Prabhupada was reluctant. He said, no. My father, I know about these sadhus. My father's always bringing him home, and I'm not very impressed, and I'm not very interested. And the friend kept saying, no, but no, this one's different. Believe me, this one's different. You got to, take my word for it. And Prabhupada went, no. And went back and forth according to how the story is told in the Lila Amrita. But then this friend was really persistent, and he got Prabhupada to agree. Okay. Well, let's go. We'll see. So they got there and they went up. When they got there, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was giving darshan on the roof of the building. So they got up there, and they both paid their obeisances. And as they were getting up from paying their obeisances, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati looked at them and said, "So you are educated young men. You should take up this work of preaching, spreading the teachings of Lord Chaitanya around the world." And in the Lila Amrita, I guess they interviewed Prabhupada. Prabhupada said he was shocked. He was shocked. He said, we just hadn't even met. We hadn't even been introduced or anything like that, and here I am. I'm just getting up from paying my obeisances, and this person is, giving me an instruction what to do with my life, But, Prabhupada appreciated it, but he was shocked, but at the same time, it gave him an immediate appreciation of just what an amazing personality he was, that he was so, enthusiastic about this and had so much realization, conviction about the importance of the mission, that he was telling two strangers, two strangers. They just come in off the street, paid obeisances. They'd never seen each other before in their lives, and he was telling them, you should preach this message of Lord Chaitanya in the Western world. Actually, there's an expression like father, like son, So Prabhupada did the same thing. Actually, Prabhupada did the same thing, because if you listen to the lectures, when Prabhupada first got to New York, if you listen to some of those very early lectures, there's one, I think it's like March of '66 or something like that, and Prabhupada actually did, I don't know if he did it on purpose, or it just, but Prabhupada did the same thing. He was telling the audience, so it's actually so important, you should preach this message of Krishna consciousness anyway. Just a little thing there. But, so that was the first meeting. And then that was, I believe 1922. And then Prabhupada didn't have a lot of association, after that. He was practicing, though. He said, Prabhupada said, after that, in this interview, when they asked him about, his meetings with the spiritual master, he said, he didn't formally take initiation at that time. Actually, I don't think he formally took initiation until 11 years after, till 1933 or 2. I'm not sure. But he said he accepted him within his heart. As far as Prabhupada was concerned, he'd met his spiritual master. He met his spiritual master, and he felt that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were in the hands of a very capable, competent person. And he felt that. He felt very inspired, even from that very first meeting. And, on this theme of how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was all about preaching, that's what he was really interested in. There was one time when Prabhupada met with him. I don't remember if it was in where it was, whether it was in Vrindavan or Radhakund, or maybe it was Radhakund, okay. And at that time, they already, the Gaudiya Math already was, they had a building. You know, they weren't at that place in Ultadanga anymore. Some rich person gave a big donation, and they built a big temple, or they bought a big temple. I think they built a big temple in Bagh Bazaar, and it was, you know, pretty an opulent temple certainly by the standards of those days. It was marble, and you know, it was opulent. And but there was a problem that the disciples were fighting over who would occupy which room, and that really was upsetting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He just felt, this is not right. They're losing sight of the whole purpose of the whole thing, you know. And it was a problem. You know, it was a real serious problem. So he, once he was with Prabhupada and Radhakund, right? So, and he said to Prabhupada, Ajundwala, is that, did I get the Bengali right? There'll be fire in these walls. And as he predicted that there was going to be a further problem, that it was going to be, you know, be the undoing of the Gaudiya Math, this attachment to the material things, and losing sight of the, you know, the preaching. And so he told that to Prabhupada. And then that's when he gave him that instruction. Right? He said he gave him that instruction. If you get money, print books. If you get money, print books. And, you know, Prabhupada, can't remember if Prabhupada in the interview just said that, you know, the impact of that instruction had on him, but it's obviously had incredible impact, because that's exactly what Prabhupada did. You know, that's what Prabhupada did. So it must have, like, when he heard that, it must have been like, he just took that and just locked it up in his consciousness, because that's, you know, that's what Prabhupada executed when he had the opportunity. So, and it's also described that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he I can't remember, I think he had the first printing press in Calcutta, when they had the temple in Calcutta. Eventually he moved it back to Mayapur. But it's described that he didn't just put the printing press in there and he installed it. They installed it like a deity. You know, he saw it as such an important thing, such an important part of his mission, you know, to produce the literature that could be distributed so people could find out about Krishna consciousness, that he actually, you know, did it with a ceremony like that. And another little anecdote that gives us an idea of just how important, you know, he thought preaching was on one occasion, there was an Ekadasi, and there was a couple of, I believe they were sannyasis, disciples, and they were supposed to be scheduled to go out and preach. But they were feeling kind of weak, you know, maybe they were not, you know, a little ill, I think, and it was Ekadasi, so they couldn't, you know, eat properly or anything like that, so they were thinking to stay back, you know. And this was brought to the attention of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he said, no way. He said, tell the cook to make khichdi, feed him khichdi, tell him to go out, send him out preaching. You know, that's how important he felt the preaching was. You know, that even it was Ekadasi, and he was telling, you know, you go out, no problem. You just eat khichdi and go out and preach. If you need to eat, you know, grains to have strength to go out and preach, despite the fact that it's Ekadasi, we will feed you the grains, and that's that important. And once again, like father, like son. There's a story where basically, you know, Prabhupada kind of demonstrated he had that same understanding, that same mood. There was an incident where Prabhupada was maybe he was in India, I can't remember if he was in Vrindavan or where, and he had a servant Harikesh was his name, Harikesh, Prabhu, and he wanted him to go to preach in Russia. So he was objecting, he didn't want to go, he was attached to being Prabhupada's servant. Yeah, it was Harikesh. And so, you know, Prabhupada was saying, no, go to preach, you should go preach. You know? And he was saying, no, but Prabhupada, you know, I can't go for this reason, that reason. And then it came to the point, he said, but Prabhupada, I can't, because in that country you can't even get vegetarian food. You know, I won't be able, you know, have anything to eat. And Prabhupada said, so eat meat. You know? And Harikesh said, but Prabhupada, what about my consciousness? And then Prabhupada said, damn your consciousness. Right? He said, damn your consciousness. Go and preach. You see? Same mood, same understanding. And that's what he did. That's what he did. He surrendered and did it. And he actually he really did some wonderful service there for many, many years, in pursuance of that instruction. So, yeah, so he was all about preaching. And he actually got that instruction. His father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, before he passed away, wrote him a letter. And in that letter, he clearly told him, I want you to do this. I want you to continue with this preaching. And I want you to, not only that, I want you to spread it to other parts of the world. I want you to spread it to the West. And he did that. He executed that. At one point in his preaching efforts, he sent sannyasis to England. Actually, it was Ban Maharaj. And then they met with some good reception there. Prabhupada in one lecture likes to tell the story of this. He met this one Lord Zetland, and he asked, I guess it was Ban Maharaj or the other one who was with him, I think there's two of them. And he said, can you make me a Brahmin? And they said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. You just have to, follow certain rules and regulations. And they said, he said, okay, what are those? He said, well, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. And this Lord Zetland said, no, impossible, impossible. Prabhupada liked that. He got a good laugh out of that, And because sometimes he would describe how he was thinking the same thing was going to happen to him when he came here to the West. He would tell people that they had to follow those rules and regulations, and Prabhupada was expecting the response would be, okay, so please go home. If that's what you're here to do, to get us to try to do that, then please go home. Prabhupada would tell that in a humorous way. But anyway, so they went to England and they went to Germany, and apparently there were two German people, two scholars, actually became initiated disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta. But that was it. It wasn't the kind of, so there was something, but it fell way short of the response he was hoping to achieve, and they were recalled. But there was one point also, another interesting thing, was some of the disciples, Prabhupada's God brothers, at one point they were getting impressed by Prabhupada, and so they actually went to Bhaktisiddhanta at one point and said, this Abhay Prabhu, he's actually very good. And he does this, he speaks nicely, plays mridanga, harmonium. He should come and live with us. They were kind of presenting like that. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's reply was, no, that's not necessary. Let him do. And in due course of time, he will do everything. So it's a little, vague, but some devotees take that as possibly an indication that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur knew, who Prabhupada was, and by that statement he was indicating that, he was, in due course of time, he's not do everything in the sense of not just move into the math or anything like that, but way more. And of course, that's what happened. Doors opening? No. So, another incident Prabhupada's fond of recalling that indicates or demonstrates the preaching spirit of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that Gunatai ki, Shishi Gunatai ki jai, Shishi Rukmini Dwakarish ki jai, Jagannath Baldev Vajra ki jai. Was this, that they used to, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was a very prolific writer and preacher, of course, like, giving programs and things, but he's a very prolific writer. He wrote many articles and many books, and you name it, he wrote it. I mean, there's a bibliography like it's this long, and of all the different things he wrote. So one of the things was he produced this newspaper called the Nadia Prakash. It was a daily newspaper, the daily newspaper, and it was just all describing, the philosophy and what's going on in the spiritual life. It was just all, So he was approached. I can't remember who approached him, but it was some big personality. And he was, they inquired from him, how is it possible? How could you produce a daily newspaper about spiritual life? And so he made the point that, well, look, here's this one small town, Calcutta, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the world, the earth. And there's, how many editions? How many newspapers are there? How many editions? So if there can be 5 editions, or or 5 newspapers and 2 editions every day, just to describe what's going on in this one speck of a town, Calcutta, on the face of the earth, why can't we have a daily newspaper describing the activities of the spiritual world, and which are unlimited? And anyway, the person was very impressed with his answer. He could understand that here's somebody who really is, deeply absorbed in this, philosophy, and to the point where they're experiencing it. It's not like a impractical thing. Based upon, they can understand that based upon what this person is experiencing, it's very practical that he's producing this daily newspaper glorifying the activities of the spiritual world and spiritual topics like that. So, what else? Prabhupada referred to him as when he was asked about, to describe his spiritual master, Prabhupada said, what can I say? He was a Vaikuntha man. He was a Vaikuntha man, And unfortunately, I don't believe there were any, lectures, where you could actually hear him speak. At least I've never heard any. Because I don't know if they had tape recorders back in those days. Did they? Has anybody ever heard a tape-recorded lecture of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura speaking? I never have. But last night, for the first time, I actually saw a little video clip. I was, searching for information about him on different websites, and I was on one, and there was a little video clip. It was only about, a couple minutes long, and unfortunately, it was just video. There was no audio, but it showed him preaching, and he was sitting on a Vyasasana. He had a beard, and he had a Bhagavatam or a book. I couldn't tell whether it was a Bhagavatam or a book in his lap. And I'd never seen before, so I had no impression previous, but I was impressed how graceful he looked, because he was sitting there like this. I think it was in real time, it wasn't slow motion or anything like that. He was speaking, and he kept going like this, and pointing to the Bhagavatam. Like he's making a point, and then he's pointing out to the Bhagavatam. But it was very graceful, and he wasn't like, because I've always heard of him. Sometimes he's referred to as cutting technique in his preaching, So I thought of somebody like being very worked up and talking very fast and saying, but it didn't look like that. I felt very relaxed just watching him, just making a point and pointing to the Bhagavatam. Anyway, it was nice to see that. It was a shame there's no audio. But, yeah, so, where was I? What was the point I made just before that? Anybody remember? The daily newspaper. Okay, anyway, further on about the preaching. So eventually, he was very concerned. His big thing was he wanted to spread this movement all over the world. He wasn't satisfied just to spread it just in India, which he'd done to a certain degree, successfully. 64 mats, that's nothing to sneeze at. And, 19 sannyasi disciples, etc. But he really did want to go out, beyond that. And he was very concerned that, this attempt that they made, by sending these 2 or 3 sannyasis out wasn't successful, wasn't what he had hoped to achieve. And so he was, that in his final days, that was what he was talking about in his, discourses with his disciples and everything like that. And also he left an instruction, before he departed. And he actually departed when he was pretty young. He was only 62 or 63 years old when he left. And I can't remember the exact specific ailment that, that was the cause of that. But he left an instruction that they should form a GBC, a governing body commission, and they should manage like that conjointly, by consensus and opinion. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. 2 weeks after he passed away, there was immediately a faction and 2 groups. And then after some time, and there was infighting in the courts, legal infighting. And then it broke down further after that. And this is, Prabhupada had to try to initially deal with that. He tried to work within the mission of his spiritual master, but they weren't at all encouraging or cooperative. So that's why eventually Prabhupada had to go at it on his own, without any really support from his godbrothers and the mission of his spiritual master like that. So, okay, well, I think maybe that could be it. Does anybody have any questions or corrections about anything I said or anything else they'd like to add? Because there's so many more wonderful things that could be said about Bhaktisiddhanta. I just try to, present the ones that kind of stood out in my mind the most. Yeah, Prabhu. Could you speak really loud, because I'm a little hard of hearing. Yeah. Well, he may have, for all I know, because but the honest answer would be I don't know. I don't know if he just kind of left it up to them to figure it out, or if he actually specifically gave certain names for people who should be on it, or if he just wanted them to have a general election, or I honestly don't know. But I know he did want it, and unfortunately it didn't happen. So anyway, I guess the conclusion doesn't seem like anybody's really got anything further they want to say, is that we should, the importance of a day like this for us is to just meditate on the outstanding quality of that person. And it's not even a difficult thing. To figure out the outstanding quality of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, as was the outstanding quality of his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as was the outstanding quality of our spiritual master, or Param spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, is that ardent, burning, indefatigable desire to spread Krishna consciousness as much, as far, and as wide, and as much as possibly could be done. And that's the true way to honor, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, the true way to honor, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the true way to honor Srila Prabhupada, as we heard this morning. Sarasvati was reading. Prabhupada said, if you really want to please me, preach. He also mentioned distribute books. So the true way to honor these personalities is to try to take that on board ourselves, and think about what we can do, not just to practice Krishna consciousness, but to try to give it to other people. Everybody will be able to do that differently. But I think that's the real way to, kind of honor and follow these personalities, to try to take it up, just like, take up what they really wanted us to do, what their heart's desire was, to see Krishna consciousness spread. We should just try to make that our heart's desire and say, okay. If it wasn't for you fellas or you Prabhus, I wouldn't even be in this movement. I might not even be alive, what to speak of being in this movement. I owe my life to you. So this is what you wanted, and I'm going to try to dedicate my life to trying to the best of my ability, which may not be much, whatever, I'm going to try to dedicate my life to try to fulfill that, to do like that, to try to fulfill your desire, which is to help spread Krishna consciousness all over. That's I think the proper, observance of these days and these ways to honor these personalities. Anybody else want to say anything? Is that okay? All right, thank you very much. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai.